We've got some big topics on today's show. We have to talk about the three current 2024 commits that are visiting elsewhere. Why not to hit panic, but to have slight concern? And then on top of that, we need to talk about the retention the Gophers are showing for the football team. It is huge, and it is a great sign in step number one for the offseason. And finally, we got to talk about the hoops teams because they are in full swing today on Wednesday here in December.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And football is still in full swing. We're still talking about that. And along with Gophers hoops today, we've got talk for both the men's and the women's prepping for some Wednesday matchups. Now, the thing I really wanted to dive into today is talking about some commits from the 2024 class, big time players that the Minnesota Gophers have committed to the roster, but will they stay here? They're taking official visits elsewhere, and some fans are in utter panic. Now, it doesn't need to be sheer panic. It doesn't need to be the sky is falling. But there are some concerns and there are some things that are promising for the Gophers, which I wanted to dive in today. Be sure to follow over on YouTube, hit subscribe there, or follow wherever you get the podcast and leave a 5-star review so others can find the show. But I appreciate the Gophers community growing over here on YouTube and through this podcasting site. And I appreciate you tapping in each and every day. Anytime you have questions, drop them in the comments, and we will get those in a future mailbag episode, which will be coming up in the very near future. But let's dive in. Let's talk about these portal thoughts, or more so the commitment thoughts of 2024. Now, like I said, there's three commits to Minnesota that are taking visits to other schools this weekend. Now, this has a lot of Gophers fans in a panic, but honestly, I would just say breathe, because could Minnesota lose one of these players? Yes, I'm not going to lie to you. It definitely could happen. Could they lose all three? Yes, maybe. We could say maybe there, but I don't think I would take those odds. I think that Minnesota will be able to retain one, maybe two of those players. All three, I don't know, but I wouldn't hit the panic button quite yet. Now, the three players that are taking those visits are Brady Pretzlaff from Michigan, a linebacker who was one of the best linebackers in the entire state, might be the best linebacker in the whole state, just won Defensive Player of the Year over there as well. He is visiting Michigan State, so a hometown school this weekend. Now, on top of that, you've got Jide Abasiri, who is visiting USC, the Trojans out in California. He is from Minnesota. He went to Prior Lake High School, and he is taking a visit out there. And then Koi Perich has two official visits set. Koi Perich, the star safety from Esco, Minnesota. And you know what? That is one of the ones that people are absolutely panicking on. And he is visiting Ohio State this weekend. And then the following weekend, he will be visiting Florida State. So some big name schools for all three of those players. And usually if you see big name schools and Gophers commits, people start to think it's over. We can't do anything. They're going elsewhere. Why did they even commit here? We should have they should have just waited until they got him and then not broke our hearts. Like, it's not like that. It's not like that. I mean, when it comes to commits, you have to make sure if you get an offer that, you know what, you're like, man, I never thought I would have got this. I never thought I would have earned this offer. I always thought I could play at the D1 level, but I wasn't sure what would come in for me. And you know what? When I was going, I felt like when I was playing throughout my senior year, I felt like I wasn't getting recruited enough. And then all of a sudden, this big offer comes in or another offer comes in. You at least want to check it out. You don't want to say, well, I got it, but you know what? I already said I'm locked in, and I want to just stay 100% loyal. Now, that's what every Gophers fan wants is, yes, you will stay 100% loyal, and I get that. But if you were a player, or if your child was a player that got this big time offer, they'd at least want to check it out to make sure you have no regrets. So you're not sitting here in a year from now thinking, man, I had that USC offer and like things are all right here right now, but I wish in the back of my head, I think I should have at least went out there and saw what it was like or something like that. And then maybe if you didn't, those are the players that tend to hit the portal because they're like, I wish I would have tried this, or I wish I would have at least visited, or I never got to experience the other coaches that were in other top tier D1 programs that are wanting me to come to their program. Instead of thinking it's absolutely over, the writing is on the wall, think of it as just doing your due diligence, which not all players need to do because some of them are like, yes, I'm locked in. I loved my experience here. I loved the recruiting process. I love the relationships I have, and I'm good. Like the other offers, thank you. I appreciate it. It's kind, but I'm out. I'm good. I'm locked in where I am. And that's a great thing too, but that's not the same process for everybody. If we all did the things the exact same, life would be boring. So overall, I think it's not a terrible thing. They can kind of make sure they have no regrets, and it also could further solidify your decision for Minnesota. If you get out there and you're like, look, I actually don't know these coaches too well, or the way that they approach me with how they want to do this, that doesn't excite me. That style of defense doesn't stand out to me. I would rather be doing what the Gophers have been telling me over the last year and a half. So it makes you think, yeah, I'm ready to go to Minnesota. I'm ready to play for them. And they might have had a struggle year last year, but their defense has shown this, and their linebackers have gotten to the league, and their safeties have gotten to the league, and they're showing player development, and they're growing player. Like, yeah, I'm locked in. I went out here. I gave it a consideration, and now I'm good. I'm locked in. That is another approach that could happen. So though some schools get into the mix late, it's not always a guarantee because it is just that. It's too late. They're not able to build strong relationships with these players between the coaching staff, between the class, the recruitment class that they've been building. It's nice to have those connections and to be excited to play with certain players that you've gotten to know since last May. So I wouldn't stress too much about it. There are still things that are playing in the favor for the Gophers on some of these commits. Like I said, Jide Abasiri, he's from Prior Lake High School. He has two current or former teammates on the Gophers from high school that are on this Gophers team in Martin Owusu and Greg Johnson. I mean, to play with two former high school teammates could be awesome. And you guys have developed something for many years, and to bring it to college and be the hometown school and be able to bring success to the program, that's huge for a lot of kids. So that still could be a big factor for Jide, on top of a great relationship that he has with Coach Debo, the defensive line coach here, who has an infectious energy, who has a great relationship and bond, and has shown improvement in year one with this Gophers defensive line. So there's still strong relationships there. You look at Brady Pretzlaff. Brady Pretzlaff has a great connection with multiple commits on this class, including Riley Sunrum, including a fellow linebacker Mason Carrier. Plus, he would be directly coached by Coach Joe Rossi, which both of the linebackers have talked about being something that they would love to do and something that they enjoy that relationship. So overall, what I'm saying is there is opportunity. There is a decent chance that these players still stick to Minnesota. Now, the one kid I have no read on is Koi Perich. His recruiting has been pretty quiet overall. Now, I loved how in he has been for Minnesota, and he hasn't decommitted to this point. He's received some major offers from USC, Ohio State, Florida State, and others. Now, when you receive offers like that, you have to do your due diligence, plain and simple. And it would be tough to lose a talent like Koi Perich. And he could truly be an impact player for Minnesota from jump as a true freshman. But that needs to be your selling point. Look at him as a safety prospect, as a hometown kid who can do it all and has shown that at every facet of the high school game. And show the list. Antoine Winfield, Benjamin St. Juste, Terrell Smith, Jordan Howden, Tyler Newbin. Eventually, Justin Wally will be on that list, who started as a true freshman, mind you. The secondary track record that this Gophers staff has been building and growing, you can stay home and still hit those NFL dreams, and in front of your friends and in front of your family. And so I think overall, they might not be fully out. Potentially being able to contribute immediately would be the number one selling point. and be the next in succession of all those DBs that we just said. So overall, I think there is a chance that all three could remain here. Two remain here. Who knows what happens? But overall, this is the one that you hope for as a Gophers fan. The one thing you need to hope for is that they don't flip on the visit. And if they don't flip and commit on the spot on the visit, then I think the Gophers have at least a fighting chance. And I don't think any of them will commit out on the spot, because if that doesn't happen, then you still have the opportunity to give a final pitch, to show the love, to show why they picked here in the first place and how strong that relationship development has grown over the year or so that they have been committed. So with all of that, you still have a chance. So don't stress, rather show love to those players, show the excitement that you have for them to come here and be a Gopher and stay and play here and everything else. And we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how it plays out, because it will play out how it is meant to play out. Now, I do want to move on to what the Gophers are doing absolutely right this offseason, and that is player retention. We've got a lot of players coming back, some big-time names, and Dinkytown Athletes is doing its job out here. So we're going to talk about that coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Jase Medical, because I know we come here to talk sports and escape from the crazy realities of life. But can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? Because according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. Now that's scary, but I can't imagine feeling more helpless if my significant other, my wife, or my close family members got sick while supply chain issues kept them from these life-saving antibiotics, medications that they need. Thankfully, we'll be okay because Jase Medical has us covered. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among many more. Now, this stuff could happen to any of us. So take advantage of the chance over at jasemedical.com and complete a physician encounter, and it will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It has never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jasemedical.com and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about what is happening this offseason, because we stressed 3, maybe 4 things. We stressed 4 things being the main focus of the offseason for the Gophers. As we got finished losing that Wisconsin game, we came in on here on this show and said, these are the 4 things we absolutely need to do from jump right away to get this offseason kicked off. The first one was player retention. The second one was hold and reinforce your commits. Now they're in the middle of that challenge. They're in the middle of keeping those commits we just talked about here, but they have doubled down. Your Samuel Madus, your Jalen Hicks, your Nathan Roy, your Brett Carroll. Like, they're getting out there and they're communicating with these guys and getting home visits and trying to keep all those commits locked in and ready to roll. And a lot of them are ready to rock and roll. I saw that on Twitter the other day. I thought it was very clever, very funny. So they're moving into point number 2 and holding and reinforcing your commits, but then it's identifying portal priorities and player development. Now, all of that needs to happen within that span, and the first 3 are happening very rapidly. Now, I want to talk about number 1, which was player retention. This is in full swing with some huge retention being the focus so far. Now, as of now, you've got Darius Taylor, who committed to being back. You've got Daniel Jackson and Lemeki Brockington, who committed to being back. Now, I think there's been some signs out there that I think Elijah Spencer will be back as well. I believe he will, but we haven't seen any videos or anything of him saying he is with Dinkytown Athletes for the next season. So I think a lot of people are still waiting on that one. But then you've got your left tackle, Ariante Ursary, coming back, an all Big Ten second-team player, officially announced yesterday. He's locked in, ready to go, and he is part of Dinkytown Athletes. You've got both of your guards who are back, Greg Johnson, Tyler Cooper, both of those players coming back for the next season. And on top of that, you went out and you did number 3, identifying portal priorities, and you got a quarterback. You still maybe could add another quarterback to this room for depth and whatnot, but you have a new quarterback in Max Brosmer who is ready to go. He showed his kind of excitement when the new left tackle protecting his blind side said he's coming back, and he retweeted it, quote tweeted it with a emoji, and it was pretty funny. But at the same time, you see that those quality talents, the quality players being kept is big time for this program. Now, you flip it to the defensive side, and every Gopher that started seems to be back, aside from Tyler Nubin, who we knew was going to take a chance at the NFL, Trey Jones, who is out of eligibility, and then Kyler Baugh, who is also out of eligibility, and occasionally Ryan Seelig would start as well, who is also out of eligibility. So 3 players that don't have eligibility anymore, and 1 who is headed to the NFL. Now, besides that, you've got Justin Wally coming back, who could be another NFL caliber defensive back. Cody Lindenberg will be back and hopefully full scale, full healthy. Darius Green is coming back. Devin Williams, Devin Eastern, Danny Strigout, Jod Joyner, Jack Henderson, all those starting players who started multiple efforts for you will be back. And you talk about them taking the next step and being in the system and playing faster and playing more instinctive and bringing in more young talent to continue to develop behind them and bring rotational minutes and snaps and opportunities and grow and compete and maybe try to supplant one of the starters because they're showing more growth and more development and pushing harder. That competitive edge, the grind to beat out your fellow brothers, but at the same time push everyone to be their best. It's only going to help this defense that had a struggle year of the last 3. Now, names I haven't seen anything so far from are Quinn Carroll, Anthony Smith, and Elijah Spencer. If Minnesota can retain those 3 players, then I believe they're sitting pretty, they're sitting great, they're sitting very positively with player retention and what Dinkytown athletes and you, the folks out there who are actually doing the work, drinking Duck Duck beer, buying parlor burgers, getting 7th Avenue pizza when it is tied in relation to Dinkytown athletes. You're joining as members. All of those things are showing that they are important and they're working with the player attention here. So I want to shout a thanks out to all of y'all who are getting active and participating in Dinkytown athletes, and I encourage others to join it as well. Now, Minnesota does also have offers out to prospects when it comes to the portal prospects, so they've been honing in on their portal priorities. But there's one I wanted to bring up on today's show because Ethan Robinson, a cornerback from Bucknell, has officially an offer from the Gophers, but he actually took an official visit out here with Minnesota as well. So it shows you when you can get an official visit, it shows you you're in heavy consideration for that player wanting to actually commit to your school when it comes to the transfer portal. So this is big because the Gophers could use another cornerback as some younger guys are still coming up with opportunities as well. You're going to see if Zaquan Bryan can step into a role. We're going to see if Tyler Bride can step into a larger role next year. We're going to see if some of these young true freshmen can try to put their names in the conversation. Tariq Watson, can he take the next step? Rylan Kelly, where's he at in this process? So overall, you have some cornerback talent and youth and opportunities in there to fight and compete for a starting spot. But to bring in another senior as well could help with the rotation and the depth and being able to have a room that can lock down across all fronts and have confidence in multiple players in case of injury and whatnot. So I did want to bring up Ethan Robinson. He's played 31 games over his career at Bucknell with 154 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 25 PBUs, 5 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. So he's a do-it-all player out there, FCS school, first team All-Patriot League. But when he visited Minnesota, one thing he mentioned is that he was impressed with how they handled Trey Jones last year of Elan, who came in and he had the opportunity to compete and he ended up winning a starting job. And now he's getting some looks from NFL teams. We'll see how that all plays out for him, but that in itself was impressive, and how they allowed him to compete and how they pushed him and developed him even in that 1 year. It stood out to a guy like Ethan Robinson, and that is a great thing to hear. It's a great thing to see what is being considered by a transfer corner like himself out there, and he could be a great depth piece to this cornerback room. I believe he has 1 year of eligibility left, but he could come in, he could compete for snaps that are available and try to follow that same pathway. So that's definitely a name to keep in mind as we continue to move forward in this offseason. Now, we'll keep you posted here on other transfer commits, other transfer offers out there as we get going. As we get closer to the bowl, we'll break that down a little bit more as well. But I am excited for what the Gophers are doing this offseason. Now, that's not to say they didn't have a struggling year. That's not to say there are still big steps that need to be made. But things that can be controlled right now and that can happen right now are, and that is a positive sign for this football program that is going to try to recover and bounce back after a struggling season. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today is the men's and women's hoops teams. They're both in action tonight, and both of them have big matchups. So we're going to talk about those coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel, because right now, as the weather gets colder, the NFL stays hot, the NBA is in full swing, and NHL is going as well. So right now, new customers over at FanDuel.com/lockedon can take advantage of $150 in bonus bets with any $5 winning moneyline bet. That's $150 right in your account if your team wins a $5 simple bet. So you got to go out there, look for the best, most guaranteed win. And like I said last week, I would have picked Michigan over Iowa easy money. That's the one that secures your $150 bag. There are other ones that you got to get out there, the NBA games, the NHL games. Look at which of these games is absolutely going to be a blowout, a massive win where you can secure that 150, and that is how you secure the bag. So definitely check it out at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Place a $5 winning moneyline bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. You can also bet on spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, let's wrap it up with some hoops talk. I want to talk about both the men's and the women's basketball teams very briefly to wrap up today's show. Now, starting with the women's team, because you know what? They're hooping. That's the squad. That is the ticket to have in Dinkytown, and I'm going to give them credit and love where it is due, because not enough media platforms in this state of Minnesota is doing that right now. It's not enough coverage on them. I want to make sure they get their love. So first of all, they're playing Kentucky tonight. First road trip for the Gophers women's basketball team. And they have a real chance, a serious chance at going 11-1 prior to their next huge challenge of Iowa on December 30th, which will be their second ranked opponent of the season. Now, their first ranked game was against UConn, and it's their only loss on the season so far. But they will have some challenges between now and then. And that first challenge is Kentucky. Now, Kentucky will probably be a game where Minnesota might start slow. It's their first road game, their first road environment, their first going through the entire experience with such a young team, that there can be some hiccups along the road. But I think that they will continue to fight through it. The second half is where they put it together, and all of a sudden they probably run away with that one, especially with this staff. I think this staff will have them locked in and ready to go. But on top of that, Kentucky has been having some struggles, and I think Minnesota will pull this one off. Then you move to your first Big Ten match, which is a Purdue game at home. Now, we need all Gopher fans to turn up and show out for this Purdue matchup and be loud and proud for the Gophers team. And I desperately want to be at that game, but I will be traveling for work, but I'm hoping I can pull it up on the flight. It is this Sunday where the Gophers will be taking on Purdue at home, so definitely be at the barn for that one. And I think it will be a defensive stalwart matchup, but I think the Gophers can keep the streak going. So it's definitely one you're going to want to tune into, but show out for your team for it. And I look forward to Minnesota continuing to stress defense in these next two matchups and scoring versatility. Those are two advantages this Gophers team has presented in every game so far this year. Now, the advantages, along with pace and spacing to find open shots and working the ball into the post and then back out to their open players, has been massive for the Gophers. And I think they continue to develop that in different facets and different looks, depending on the game plan they have written for that specific opponent. This coach has been breaking it down and playing specifically for each opponent they play very well, and the players are catching on more and more and quicker and doing better. And the Drake win showed just that. Even through a double overtime, even through losing a Maya battle due to foul troubles and things like that, they found a way to get it done, and they pulled out another win, a quality win against a team that took down Iowa State, who had been dismantling teams, that took Iowa to the wire and scored 90 on Iowa. That Drake team was a very respectable team, and the Gophers found a way to get a dub. So I am very encouraged by this women's basketball team. Now, the one thing that I'm hoping to see more of is minutes from that bench rotation. 15 to 18 minutes a game from players like Nia Holloway, Janae Sanders, Maggie Zanano. Those three players getting more incorporated would be very helpful for this team and the stars of this team to keep them efficient and producing at a high level, giving them quick breathers. Now, I'm not saying long stretches. These could be brief spurts of play, but getting them 15 to 18 minutes a game, I think it will help this team not only in the immediate now, but down the stretch, and not letting fatigue set in during the back half of the season when it counts the most. Now, flipping it to the men's basketball side of things, the Gophers men's take on Nebraska here at home tonight. I will be at that one. Nebraska is 7-1 with a recent loss to Creighton, a ranked team in Nebraska as well. They run that state when it comes to basketball, but Nebraska is not too bad in itself so far to start this year. Now, they're ranked 75th in the net rankings. Minnesota is currently 156th in the net rankings of over 300 schools. Now, it's a quality opponent, and that is currently ranked better than Mizzou, but worse than Ohio State and San Francisco. And those are the three losses that the Gophers have so far on the season. Now, Nebraska has currently played 6 games versus quad 4 opponents and won all 6. Then they played one quad 3 game and won it, and then they lost their only quad 1 game. Meanwhile, Minnesota has lost 2 quad 2 opponents, and then they've lost to 1 quad 3 opponent in Missouri as well. And that is a game the Gophers should have won. So really, the Gophers and Nebraska, when it comes to the types of games that they're playing, have been in a very similar spot. This matchup will be an opportunity for the Gophers to not only get a quad 2 win, with Nebraska being the 75th ranked team in the net, but also get their first Big Ten win on the season. And that would be a big thing for the Gophers prior to the actual long stretch of the Big Ten. So I think it's a major game for the Gophers. Now, just to let fans who listen occasionally but don't really know quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4, I'll give you the quick synopsis. Quad 1 wins are the big wins. Those are the things that help you get into the tournament and help your resume for the tournament. And they include home games against teams in the top 30 of the net rankings, a neutral site game of a team in the top 50, or a road game against a team in the top 75. Quad 2 includes home games in the teams from 31 to 75 at home. Neutral site is 51 to 100, and then away games 76 to 135. So basically, it's the quality of opponent and depending on where your matchup is. Now, this one being at home and Nebraska being right on the edge at 75 would make this a quad 2 opponent that the Gophers will try to get a win against. Now, the key players to know from this Nebraska team to wrap this one up: you've got Casey Tominaga. He is the best player on Nebraska's team by far and away. You've got to slow him down. He's scoring 15 points a game. Quality guard who shoots a lot. He likes to get his shots up. He has a dangerous pull-up, and he likes to take threes. He's definitely the player you got to try to slow down. Now, this is a Nebraska team that the Gophers are familiar with. They beat them once last year, but they still have to find a way to slow Tominaga down. Now, then you've got 2 transfers who have been big for the Cornhuskers this year. You've got Rink Mast. He's a transfer from Bradford who is nearly averaging a double-double, 14.4 points, 9.8 rebounds. And so it'll be curious to see how he takes on Pharrell Payne and Dawson Garcia in the paint. And then you've got Bryce Williams, another guard coming from Charlotte, who is their best do-it-all player and their best three-point shooter. He's averaging nearly 42% from deep on 4 threes per game. And on top of that, he is 13 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 2 assists per game. So he is a get-it-all, do-it-done guard. Then finally, Juwan Gary, a player back for the Cornhuskers from that last year. He has been stepping up 14 points per game this season, and he has been shooting the best from the field as well with 54% from the field. He's been improved from last year, and this is his best year of his 4 years, 2 between Alabama and 2 with Nebraska. So there's 4 players to really lock in on for the Gophers. We'll see if they can slow them down, keep the defense going, keep their pace going, and cut out the turnovers. That's going to be huge in this one. We'll see what happens, but that's going to do it for us on today's show. Roll the boat, Sky, you might go Gophers, and as always, don't forget to subscribe.